Welcome back, Dogface Soldiers. You're listening to the 3rd Infantry Division Realism Gaming Podcast. Here with me today is my co-host, Sergeant Nagy.
Hey guys, how's it going?
With us today is our two guest speakers, the man behind the rank, Officer Candidate Jordan Duck.
Yep, I'm here. What's going on?
And our Soldier of the Quarter, Specialist Poyner.
I'm a little sick, but I'm here. How's it going?
We're going to go ahead and kick off this podcast with this quarter's top awards and promotions, starting off with the awards through the quarter 4 2024. The Bronze Star Award was awarded to Lieutenant Cooper, Sergeant First Class Marsh, Staff Sergeant Nicholas, Corporal Owo, and Specialist Kidon. The Air Medal was awarded to Chief Warrant Officer 4, now Chief Warrant Officer 5, Diomedes, and Chief Warrant Officer 3, Lotus. The Purple Heart was awarded to Staff Sergeant Ivanov, Sergeant Fitzgerald, and Specialist Erickson. The Army Commendation Medal, or ARCOM, was awarded to Staff Sergeant Nicholas, Sergeant Clayton, Corporal Byrd, Corporal Winters, now retired Sergeant Winters, Corporal Owo, Specialist Anderson, Specialist Ramirez, Specialist Mackenheimer, Specialist Shortle, Specialist Coe, PFC Lanza, and PV2 Meadows. And lastly, the Meritorious Service Medal was awarded to Corporal Gregoire. And now, Sergeant Nagy will take it away with the promotions.
Yeah, we had some big promotions this quarter with Chief Warrant 2, Lotus, being promoted to Chief Warrant 3, Warrant Officer Candidate Erickson, promoted to Warrant Officer First Class, Staff Sergeant Duck to Sergeant First Class, Sergeant Byrd to Staff Sergeant, Corporals Vic, Corporal Clayton, Corporal York, all promoted to Sergeant. Specialist Owo, Swoop, and McIntosh were promoted to Corporal.
Cool, thank you. For the unit news today, Lieutenant Winters officially retires here at the start of 2025. He retired with the promotion to captain, along with his better half, as I said, Corporal Winters. She got the promotion to sergeant. Now, Sergeant First Class Duck, or I should say then Sergeant First Class Duck, now Officer Candidate Duck, is the new platoon leader of 2nd Platoon as he transitions into the Officer Candidate School, along with Sergeant Byrd, who transitions to OCS following his new appointment to 1st Platoon, replacing Lieutenant Vandal. With that, Captain Tucci is stepping down from his role as Alpha Company's commanding officer to the role of Alpha Company executive officer, giving room for Lieutenant Vandal to take over as the new commanding officer for Alpha Company. It's a lot of changes kind of going in there, but specifically, OCS Duck is now the 2nd Platoon leader, and OCS Byrd is the new 1st Platoon leader. With that, Sergeant Nagy, if you want to go ahead and talk about the new news within our DMOSs.
Yeah, so for S1 recruiting and retention, as always, we are hiring recruiters. You can come see myself, Sergeant Nagy. Shameless plug. I think it's a fun job. It's not terribly hard, and it's very important. S3, they are hiring RSOs, Range Safety Officers. See Sergeant Clayton. He's the new NCOIC, taking over from First Sergeant Garcia. S4, CID, Combat Imaging and Documentation. They are hiring multimedia illustrators. Go see Sergeant First Class Marsh. For S6, Public Affairs Office, We are currently hiring journalists, cameramen, and editors. You can see Sergeant McKenzie here if you're interested in any of those positions. Now for Sergeant McKenzie with some Arma news.
Thank you. We're also forgot to add this in there. We've started adding a new position in public affairs for essentially what we are doing right now, the voice of public affairs. We are calling them anchormen, kind of a CNN-style thing. What we're going to start doing is getting out of traditional typed-based journalism and moving more into the YouTube space, where we're going to start doing a lot more of our unit news and Arma news. With Arma news, Major LaFlash and then Captain Tucci were recently appeared on an episode of the Milson Units podcast. They talk a lot about their presence over the last 20 years as a Milson community, and just kind of encouraging the current soldiers of ACO and the rest of the 3rd ID to go ahead and continue doing what they're doing. The Reaction Forces and Western Sahara Creator DLCs received substantial updates in the month of December. Reaction Forces added new vehicle variants for the Hemet, Tempest, and multiple pickup trucks, whereas Western Sahara added various fixes and quality of life improvements. Lastly, the SOG Prairie Fire Creator DLC also received some new updates this past December, with 20 vehicle, 15 weapons, and multiple terrain assets having undergone improvements on handling, dexterity, and performance optimization. With that, we're going to go ahead and transition into the man behind the rank, with, again, as we said, Officer Candidate Duck. So, OCS Duck, again, welcome to the podcast. I know you have not been in this hot seat before since joining the unit. So I would like to ask you, in your time here with the unit, what is your favorite aspect of the unit so far?
So far, definitely just the people. That's a really easy answer for me. The gameplay's good, but that's not the reason that keeps me coming back. It's definitely just hanging out, meeting new people, speaking to people from different aspects of life, and learning about different viewpoints, different perspectives. It's all good.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, you've been specifically in the 3rd Infantry as a leader. You came from a big unit merger, bringing a lot of your comrades into the 3rd ID, and you specifically started in that leadership position. So what would you say defines you as a leader?
I think, again, it's specifically for me, my focus is always on my guys. It's being that link between them and the rest of the wider unit to make sure that their opinions and their beliefs are met to the standard which they should be expected of, provided that they meet the unit standards as well. So it's that back and forth of making sure expectations are met and everybody's happy, and if that's not the status quo, then how we can fix it to make sure that everybody's having a good time. Awesome.
So specifically, you've only been a part of 2nd Platoon, and 2nd Platoon, if people don't know, is our reconnaissance platoon. And I should say, if no one from 1st Platoon or anyone who has never been in recon, especially in Arma before, wouldn't know, you guys could be a whole different breed, or you guys could be almost one-to-one the same with the infantry. So I would say, as a key member of our leadership, how would you go about solving inner unit issues?
Yeah, so we had a few back and forths in the past that have been squashed now, and the main thing which has happened to squash that has been working towards a place of better communication between the platoons, where now people are excited to be working closely with First Platoon. Look, oh, there, it's the guys. I love those guys. And being a bit more tangible as to how we're supporting, their friendly soldiers, rather than it being quite an esoteric, alienated kind of position, as how it was in its infancy before we had all of the kinks kind of ironed out. But also making sure that leaders at every level are very quick to kind of squash any anonymity which is building. And that's, from both us going outwards and also relies on First Platoon doing the same from them coming inwards towards us. So making sure we can catch those issues and squash them and make sure everybody is coming at things with the right headspace has been very important as well.
Awesome. Now, as of right now, you are an officer candidate. You are going into this kind of educational period just before you get that nice shiny butter bar of the second lieutenant. However, where would you say that you could see yourself in the unit by the time that you hit that retirement era?
That's a very interesting question. So I don't really know how to answer that anymore. I would have, if you'd asked me this a month ago, said that I would never be taking platoon leader, that I would be staying as a platoon sergeant, and that I had no ambition to move up against the role. But it turns out when the time called for it and needs must, I was willing to step up and answer that call. So really, it depends on where the unit goes. I don't anticipate myself wanting to leave second platoon leadership until I retire, but if the situation calls for it, and it would be in the unit's best interest for me to have to move up to company or move down even to another role, I would be receptive to that change.
Okay, so the adaptability is there at least, up until you're ready to kind of hang it up. Now, when you're not, being the leader of second platoon, how do you spend your free time out of game?
So probably the hobby I spend the most time doing is playing the drums outside of Arma. Although additionally, I spend a lot of time immersing myself, pun not intended, in scuba diving, reading about it, trying to learn more and improve. That's definitely one of those hobbies where you can get a tangible, consistent kind of self-improvement. And that's something which is very addictive to my general kind of personality, I guess. And I'm aspiring to continue training quite heavily on that to end up technical diving route.
Nice. I'm deathly afraid of water, but I wish you all the best of luck on that one. So a big part of being in leadership is kind of that healthy mix of showing your guys that you're able to give orders, but at the same time that you're kind of willing to just be one of the guys. How would you say builds a good bond between superiors and subordinates?
I think the best way to break that mentality down of almost like an us versus them, not necessarily in a bad way, but it can still have that kind of brick wall there. Definitely relying on your team leaders, those intermediate levels, to get the ball rolling if you're moving into a new position is wise, but also just spending time. You can't substitute spending time and genuinely wanting to hang out with the people that you lead. That goes above and beyond anything else that you can't fake that. And they know it.
Yeah, of course. Now we've heard what you do out of game, but what would you say is your relaxation game when it's not, going and defending freedom in Arma?
So I've been playing a lot of Stalker and Stalker mods. I love the franchise. I think the relaxation game aspect is probably the anomaly mod. I have gone back and forwards on another mod called Gamma, but that's not as chilled out, whereas anomaly's a bit more kind of head empty. On the surface, you wouldn't think it, given it's like a survival horror shooter, but it when you spend enough time in any game, it can kind of become comfortable and automatic. So
Yeah, if you didn't say that last bit, I would have thought that you might need to see like a psychiatrist or something like that. But it makes sense. Now, especially being in this new position where you're going to be making a lot of changes, and this can be either in the position that you're in now as an OCS, or this, you could be thinking back when you were a sergeant. If there is one thing that you can change in the unit, what would it be?
I mean, I'm having a really good time at the minute. I don't have any major changes I would like to see. I think if I was making a bit more of a sarcastic answer, it would be the timescales to suit Europeans more, but that's not really fair for you guys across the pond. So I don't think I have a serious answer to that question. I'm pretty happy at the minute.
Nice. I mean, if I were someone from Europe, I would definitely say, bring trial by combat in or something like that. I feel like that'd be super European of you. Now, you have been in the third ID now for almost 2 months. Actually, you're coming up in about another 15 days. You're hitting your 2 month, your 2 year. Jesus. In 15 days, you're hitting your 2 year anniversary with third ID. What's a memory of the unit that you have fresh in your mind right now?
So the first thing that comes to my mind is actually from the FTX period when I just joined the unit. I think you may have been actively playing. That was before your deployment, if I am correct. And we were just deciding which vehicles we were going to take for second platoon, and we were trialing the Humvees on that weekend, and we weren't sure just how much we could push their speed. So during one of the FTX missions, we were tasked with scouting out a bridge to see if it was viable, and we found out that one of the major support structures on the bridge was damaged, and that it wasn't necessarily what you would call in a usable position. And we decided to do a little field test on just how fast these Humvees could be. So we backed up a bit on the bridge, and then I told the driver to full send it, and we managed to clear this probably 10-meter gap, and then we secured the far side. And the best part was then seeing first platoon come rolling up once we'd secured the other side, and we were waiting to see if they needed us to scout another side of another route or not, whether they could do the same. And then we just see striker after striker after Bradley after striker just tip off the edge of this bridge, and they all made it. So I think that's definitely up there with my favorites.
I think I remember which one you were talking about too. I think it was just before I left for my military deployment, and I remember I vaguely remember us almost crashing and burning.
It all worked out in the end.
Yeah. So, as someone who's been with the unit for almost 2 years, how did you get into Arma and milsims to begin with?
I think like a lot of people, a friend introduced me to it, and it kind of just stuck immediately as something I really enjoyed and I wanted to stay doing. There's that slow progression where you start learning the game, you start learning what you enjoy doing, what you don't, and then eventually it progressed into kind of really enjoying leadership, and then I bounced my way through a couple of units until I made it here.
Nice. I know that there are some people who have very long, convoluted ways of just kind of getting into the milsim aspect. I know, like for me, like I got into Milsim because of I think it was like Halo Reach or something like that on the Xbox, and people were doing like clans and stuff, and then there were some people who would just get so into like the military side of Halo of all games that they start putting in ranks and stuff. That was I think there are some people who would get that convoluted. Mine's not that terrible, but there are some people who get really bad. So obviously, if I'm remembering this correctly, you started off as the assistant squad leader, I believe, to Lieutenant Vandal, and then kind of moved into the squad leader position, platoon sergeant, and obviously now you're the platoon leader. All your roles so far has been within a leadership capacity, and specifically within recon. Outside of the role of being a leader, has there been any other role that you've ever wanted to try, whether it was in the 3rd ID or in another unit that you may have been in?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of the units I've been in the past have had a bit more kind of cringe operator special forces-esque flavor to them. Because that's what a few of my friends were interested in, like I said, as I kind of got into the Milsim and Arma sphere. And I think with that, some of the most enticing stuff, especially with my current hobbies, would be combat diving. But the most experience I have with anything in Arma actually is not strictly leadership, but I would say probably EOD is the other one, the big one for me. I enjoy the kind of creativity that EOD can bring to the table, where you can solve a lot of different problems with the right explosives, and it's not always obvious how to go about it. Like, you can completely change how an assault is done by just blowing the right hole in the right side of a wall.
Hell yeah. I want to say, like, way back in the day, we tried something like that with this unit. I think it was like 2016 or 2017. We had tried something, or the idea of EOD was kind of fishing around that time. Well, we've heard a good chunk about you, OCS Duck. I think a lot more than what people have ever heard from you up until this point, because I know you're very tight with 2nd Platoon, so anyone else who's watching this is going to learn a good chunk about you, especially being the newest up-and-coming officer. I will go ahead and end this little Q&A with you with one last question. What would you say to your fellow soldiers?
Yeah, good question. I think the main thing, if I wanted to do any kind of PSA to use this slot for that, would just be feel free to reach out. For any reason. I know I'm very communicative with all of the guys that join 2nd Platoon. I have an open door policy, but perhaps that doesn't get passed around to the other elements in the unit as much. But if anybody's struggling with anything kind of DMOS wise, or just general unit wise, and they would like a second opinion that's kind of emotionally detached from whatever they're doing, because I've kind of got very little skin in the game with regards to how 1st Platoon runs. I'm always more than happy to kind of step in and act as a middleman.
All right. Well, Cadet Duck, thank you again for this awesome little Q&A. I will go ahead and pass it on over to Sergeant Nagy for the Soldier of the Quarter.
Alrighty, Specialist Poyner, we got a few questions for you today. First off, I'd like to say congratulations on Soldier of the Quarter. I think it's very well deserved. Big congratulations for myself and the rest of the unit, I'm sure. So, just go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you again. I didn't even see myself winning it by like a long shot, so I appreciate everybody's nomination.
Definitely. So, Specialist Poyner, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm 22, almost 23. I'm from Texas. I'm in the U.S. military. I'm 8th generation military, so kind of like everything military has always been like a huge interest of mine. So when I discovered Arma, I was like, oh, this is like my perfect type of game.
Awesome. That's great. So why did you join the 3rd Infantry Division Realism Gaming Unit, and what keeps you here?
So I kind of discovered Arma back in like 2017 when like Arma Altus Life was like a really big thing. Like I said, I come from like a military and police family, so I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I kind of left because kind of got bored of that. And then around late 23, I was like, oh, I want to get into Arma Milsim. I was like, that would be pretty cool. You know, it kind of relates to what I do in real life. So I was like kind of looking at the units. I saw the 3rd ID and I was like, oh, that'd be sick. So I was going to apply, but then at the time, what I was doing in the military just didn't afford for it. So I want to say late 2024, I decided to apply again. And it's just been a perfect fit ever since. And kind of what keeps me staying here is just like everybody that I've met. They're really what makes me want to keep devoting so much time to playing with the unit.
Yeah, those interpersonal relationships are, a real factor in retention here. So, do you have any favorite moments, funny, whatever moments throughout your time in the unit?
Yeah, so I actually have 3 that come directly to mind. The first one is actually with yourself. Before I joined the unit, whenever I applied, but I was actually on vacation at the time. I think I had like a week left, and I was like, so I applied, and you were like, oh, well, we can't accept you right now. You gotta reapply. And at the time, I was like, oh, this guy sucks. I hate this guy. I was like, I didn't want to join the unit anyway, and then I was like, thought about it. Whenever I got back home, and I was like, oh, maybe I do want to join the unit. So then I joined the unit, and it's been awesome ever since. And then another one was uh, whenever I was in Force Squad, and we were told to hold like a road, and I was the automatic rifleman at the time, and I believe it was Sergeant York. I think he was a specialist at the time. He was like, "Oh, Pointer, I need you to hold this little part of the forest right here," and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I can go ahead and do that." And maybe like 30 seconds later, I didn't know it at the time, but I had a whole entire platoon come at me. And, M240 can only shoot so fast. So I ended up going down, and they spent the next 30 minutes trying to bring me back.
That's pretty good. And it's especially funny now because we work together in RRO.
Yep, and then like the last Murray that I can think of comes to mind, which is very memorable to me. Was actually not that long ago whenever we were in one of our operations. So with second platoon, we kind of go ahead of everybody else. And being the FO, I get a drone. We had just taken contact a lot, so we were like constantly on the move, and we found a spot where like we could sit and had good observation posts and everything. And I was like, okay, well, I had tasked CW3 Lotus with like scouting the area to make sure we weren't getting pushed again. And so I put up my drone to do the exact same thing. And then I heard Corporal Swoop say that we had a helicopter incoming. And, at the time I wasn't really thinking about it because there had been a bunch of enemy air in the air that mission. And so I was like, well, wait a second, because I knew CBD3 Lotus was kind of in the area since I had just tasked him. And as of almost in slow motion, I was like, wait a minute. And I started to turn my drone and I watch one of my fellow fire team members shoot down CW3 Lotus. And I heard him very disappointingly half of a sentence say we're taking fire, but he of course didn't finish it. And at the time it it wasn't that great, but looking back I think it was very like memorable.
I was there that day and I saw the exact same thing from Zeus, and it was pretty hilarious. All right, moving on to the next question. What Army value is the most important to you and why?
So for me, hands down, it has to be integrity. One of like our 3 core values in the Air Force is actually integrity first. So I think that's kind of why it has like a strong sense with me. But like integrity is so big because if like you can't be trusted to do things whenever nobody else is looking, a lot of people can't trust you to do like the right thing all the time. And then building on top of that, I've always been a huge person about like you can come talk to me about anything and I'll do my best to help it. Or like if you just need a shoulder to like listen on or like an ear, and integrity like ties into that perfectly because it really helps people know that like hey they tell me hey don't tell anybody else this but I just want to talk to you about it, then they know they can trust me.
Yeah, you definitely see integrity a lot. That's a popular one for sure, and I'd agree with everything you pointed out. So, what motivates you to keep pushing forward in the unit, and do you have any goals for your future here?
Yeah, so what motivates me is I'm kind of like a big go get it type of person. So in the unit we have a bunch of different schools, so I always feel like there's more schools or trainings or like battle drills to be learned. Especially like when you're in the operations, you never know what you're gonna expect. So I feel like there's always something you can learn from that. And then as far as goals go, I have a short-term goal of just making sergeant. That's the max rank in my billet as a FO. So that's kind of like my main short-term goal. As far as long-term goals go, I have one that's very ambitious, which is to earn every medal in the unit at least once, besides the Medal of Honor. And then my other like long-term goal would to eventually become a squad leader.
Nice. I definitely have seen that go get it attitude from you in RRO. You are tenacious over there, and we definitely appreciate your hard work. Are there any valuable lessons you've learned in the unit that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so the main like lesson that I've learned, not just in like life as a whole, but also in the unit, is always show everybody respect. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just a Milsim unit. People have real life things going on, so just show everybody respect because you never know what they could be going through.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I appreciate your time, Specialist Poyner. Thanks so much for answering those questions. We'll now open it up to just discussion about interesting mods from Arma 3. If anybody has any recommendations, Cadet Duck, I know you run a mod pack that's definitely different than what most people play with. Is there anything you'd like to share?
I'm pretty content at the moment with the optional mods. I don't have my eye on anything. Lambs, which was a recent addition to our pack, is definitely going to turn out to be a interesting addition. I'm very worried about what Vandal can do with that and the other guys in S2 because they are substantially more intelligent. The kind of AI department now compared to what they were with base armor.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what is Lambs? Could you explain that to some people? Like, I don't know personally. I saw it was added, but I'm not exactly sure what it does.
Sure. So Lambs is a complete AI rewrite for how the AI behaves. So the AI can actually be suppressed now. And for example, before in Arma, say an AI was on a turret and they were assigned to be on that turret. They would just stay on that turret. They would run the turret drive ammunition. They would stay on that turret. If you shot at them, they would just stay on it and man it out. Whereas now the AI will get off the turret if it runs out, or if you're suppressing the fuck out of them, they will get off the turret and they will go and find cover like a real person would. So they behave a lot more realistically. They talk to each other, so if you shoot at one squad, another squad will come and flank you while the first squad tries to fix you. They're going to start using proper tactics without the Zeuses needing to micromanage every single unit on the enemy field. It's basically as close as you can get to PvP without having an entire enemy force of players.
Very interesting. Sounds like a great addition to the mod pack. Do you have anything Specialist Poyner mod-wise? It doesn't have to necessarily, pertain to the unit. It could be, like the SCP mod we ran or anything you've come across in your days playing Arma.
Off the top of my head, I do not.
All right, I don't have anything myself, as I literally only play Arma with the unit pretty much. Sergeant McKenzie, you got anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so the only thing that I really can kind of go for, I know that last quarter I brought up a lot of the big Warhammer 40K mods with at the time then Sergeant Bird. I will say that one of the big things that are starting to come out, I know that Cadet Duck said he's big into Stalker. They have started putting out a lot more of the Stalker map packs for things like making game modes or some kind of like makeshift mission or something like that. One of the big ones that I started looking into was the Lesser Swamp. That's a big map that I think is going to be pretty valuable for people who want to do some kind of like stalker, modded mission.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's everybody's input on mod. Sergeant McKenzie, if you want to wrap it up for us.
Yeah, for sure. So again, those who are tuning in and watching the Third ID podcast, I want to go ahead and thank my co-host, Sergeant Nagy. I want to go ahead and thank our man behind the rank, OCS Duck, and again, with a big congratulations on back end Specialist Poyner as the 2024 Quarter 4 Soldier of the Quarter. I'm Sergeant McKenzie, your host, and yeah. Thank you all for tuning in.